Hi there YouTube, it's me, Morrison America. This video is going to talk about the waiting game. Now, what do I mean by the waiting game? You just waiting. This is a follow-up video from several other videos. The big one is the GRAC one, the breakdown for the Guardian Soul, Return of 5, Absolute Glare, and Crack 5 video. And then another video you should watch would be the Guardian Soul one, if you should go for it, or if you shouldn't. Make sure to watch those videos. There's going to be a bunch of other videos that will be in those descriptions, and me just saying you should watch those before you watch that one. Make sure to watch it. But this is if you're on the fence about making a Guardian Soul, and if you decide to play the waiting game. Because here's the thing, stuff is going to get cheaper. Minus one little thing. And I was able to pick up on this pattern on the Japanese PSO2. Now, here's the thing about patterns. You are gambling on a concept, but if it has been established and if you're able to pick up on it, you can gamble on it. And guess what? I was able to do that. The thing is, when I first made my Guardian Soul, we did not have some of the items that you guys have right now, like the mission badge stuff, and then the updates to the mission pass, and then several other things as well. So I actually physically made my first Guardian Soul. I used what, like rough around 300 mil. And the reason why I went to 300 mil wasn't because of the stuff that I need to make Guardian Soul. It was the things that I needed to use to protect that Guardian Soul and the fodder pieces with it. I underestimated the foreshadow attacks. I'm gonna go a bit into talk about that in a bit. However, I will stress this out once again. On the Japanese side, I was able to pick up on it because once you get used to certain things on PSO2, you can pick up patterns and trends. Now, obviously, this is going to spoil some of my, fun and, blindness to the game. But sadly, it's going to happen, especially if you play years of a certain game. And guess what? I gambled on these concepts and thoughts because back then, especially if you've been playing the game frequently, you would know that, like, back then in episode 1 through 3, we did not have a factor receptor. We only had a soul receptor that you can get from PSO2 ES. Give it some time, when they add new stuff, there's going to be more stuff as well. Big example is we got a bunch of factor abilities, and then they eventually added a factor receptor as a drop for PSO2 ES. So, looking at that pattern and looking back at the history, I was like, okay, so what will happen if I decide to gamble and say that, they might make a Reverie Receptor next, because if they already made one for a Factor Receptor, they might make one for Reverie Receptor, and now they could make one for a Glare Receptor as well. Now, the Glare one will take a while to become a thing if they do continue PSO2 and PSO2 ES. It will still play out, but it's just that when is it going to happen, or if it's going to happen. Once again, you are gambling on these concepts. Let me go over here and show you guys that there is a Reverie Receptor over here on the Japanese PSO2 now. No clue if Global is able to get these as well. But yes, as you can see, Reverie Receptors on a unit pieces can sell for 12.4 mil. And you can also find these with a Soul Receptor as well. So I gambled on that. Some people made fun of me when I decided to make the, when I made my first Guardian Soul piece, I had, Guardian Soul, Crack 5... Absolute Glare, and then an Ether Factor. The reason why I went for Ether Factor at the time was due to the fact that Returner Veteran Resolve was not easy to farm for. We didn't even get that certain extreme quest until later, after, I don't know, a couple months when they released TDP and the Guardian Soul stuff. So yes, like, I gambled on that. Some people made fun of me saying, oh, you should have went for, like, Mana Rev because, high attack. But this is a whopping plus 50 compared to the 40. The other reason why I went for an Absolute Glare is because it's an all-rounder. If I'm already trying to emphasize on a lot of stats, I'm going to make sure that I do that. Like, don't get me wrong, yeah, Mana Rev can give 50 attack and a good chunk of HP and PP, but what about the other stats? It does not cover that, and Absolute Glare does that. But guess what? I gambled on the fact that they're going to add more abilities, and they're going to work on that Reverie Receptor, and guess what? Reverie Receptor didn't come out till, I don't know, it was like a month ago or so on the Japanese side. But right after I made my first Guardian Soul piece, they released this mission badge stuff, and then they also released the mission pass for the Japanese side, which I didn't really have a huge dislike to because of how they operated the mission pass stuff. And I am gonna bring that up, the mission pass, and show you why I didn't really bitch about it as much. Because of what happened at the 30 tier level and then the 32 tier level. But yeah, they added these things over here. Now, I know I made a video saying that you might want to use these, but that's only if you were able to do your math and figure out, oh shoot, you're going to need a lot of mission badges for this. And if you were playing from the very beginning and you made sure to get a lot of these, then you might be at an advantage. The problem with the mission pass over there on Global is that it kind of goes to... It kind of forces you in a predicament where you go for the cosmetics or the technical things. So, yeah. The thing is, this is costly. However, on the Japanese side, it's not as bad because you can get almost everything until the very end at level 31 through 35. So, they added this. And guess what? This is a pop item if you use the SAP method. If you're not familiar with that term, look above my head. Actually, you might want to watch the video talk about the mission badge talk as well if you're playing on Global. So, you'll find that above my head or in the description. But yes, the thing is, they added these things, and I was like, oh, shoot. Now I know that me doing that method, which is what Guardian Soul, Absolute Glare with Ether Factor, and Crack 5, I just saved like a good chunk of my own Meseta. I don't need to try to, you know, rework my units. And then not only that, I can just do an add ability over at the SAP, using the SAP method, slap that on, and I save 120 because I already have Ether Factor. The last unit piece I made, it pretty much did the same thing. Instead of going for like, actually I did get Ether Factor. I did push it to a 5 slot. So I got like Guardian Soul, Absolute Glare, Ether Factor, Crack 5, and Returner 5. So I have a 5 slot. Guess what? I saved 120. Not only that, I can just easily tap this on and then push it from like 5 slot to a 6 slot, 6 slot to an 8 slot. So that's how I did my approach. If you want to see that, I already made a video talking about my Guardian Soul Unit 3 piece. So yeah, that. This, I didn't really use it during the first time. And once again, if you want to use these 3 before making Guardian Soul, you really have to do your math and figure out, oh shoot, I'm going to need a lot of badges for this. Once again, there's that video talking about the mission badge stuff if you want to see how much you need for this, and this. But yeah, so if you played a waiting game, the entire point of me going into that history lesson, that breakdown, is to just emphasize on the waiting game. You will be able to save a lot if you just wait for certain things. The only little problem you bump into is recycle badges in the AC items, because if you get to try to go for a Guardian Soul, it's going to be the force text that's going to be a pain in the ass. It's not the ability to farm for these augments and stuff. It's not like making and doing the formula to go for a Guardian Soul, Absolute Glare, Crack 5, Return to 5 is hard. You can't farm for those pieces. You can avoid spending. You could buy. It just depends on what you really want to do. But if you want to try to make a Guardian Soul and farm for these pieces, that is possible. The big thing you're bumping into is this thing over here, the ability, protection, 4 slot or lower. Why is this a problem? Look at how much you have to trade in to get this thing. You need to trade in 10 AC scratch items. So if I go over here to the Visa phone, and this is on ship to on the Japanese PSO2, it's not going to be true, or it's going to vary between all the different ships, and then this will also vary on the global side as well. But if I type in recycle badges over here, just to stare at what the current price is, you can see that it's going for 1,783,950. Now, this is only for a couple badges. And you can see that there's a certain place where you're going to be stuck at because someone's selling 50 of it. Then once you get past that barrier and you go for this one, it's going to increase, and then that's going to increase. So if you need a lot of these, guess what? You get to deal with this price. Now, just buying one of them isn't as bad, but if you decide to times this number by 10, it gets bad because it stacks. And guess what? That's only for one force slot protect. Now, I have no clue if Global actually got the negative 20% or a 20% discount to the recycle shop exchanges. If you do get that, you would want, or if you did have that, you would want to wait for one of those, because that is going to save you on, you know, getting a full 10 recycle badges. You could just trade in 8 AC recycle badges, or trade in at least 8 AC items to try to get a protect, because if you do your math, like, what is 20% of 10? It's going to be 2. So 10 times minus 2 is going to be 8. You're only spending 8 of these badges, 8 of these AC items to get a force stop protect. But once again, this depends on price. And when Guardian Soul comes down, when people try to make it, supply and demand. You cannot really control the market. You could try to influence it, but at the same time, that's going to have a backlash to it. And not only that, this is a way to try to get a good chunk of money. So there's going to be a lot of variables that play into how the prices are going to be. But most likely, if they're stuck at 1 million, they're stuck at 1 million. If they're stuck at 1 million, 1 million times 10, especially with these recycle badges, is going to be 10 mil. So this is the only problem with you trying to go for a Guardian Soul. It's the price of these items. So if you want to go for it, once again, you got to take into consideration with this damn thing. Now, everything else, you can play the waiting game and you'll eventually get a lot of these abilities easily without having to buy as much. So I'm going to show you a certain item over here on the market. Let's go for Soul Catalyst. Guess how much this thing costs over on the Japanese side, or at least on Ship 2. Below 100,000. Below 100,000. And this is a Soul Catalyst. So you might be wondering, how much is an Astral Soul then? Let me go to the, actually no. Let's see what pops up first when I just have this as a unit. It's only 514,000. 514,000. What happens if I decide to go to the extreme? Even at an 8 slot Astro Soul. 840,000 is the lowest. Next price is 1 million. That's half of an Ark's weekly missions for one of your characters. It is cheap. You might be saying, why is it so cheap, Morph? It's because the game decides to drop them naturally. Now, they did with the Japanese seasonal quest that... What was it? The Christmas seasonal quest that we had for 2020, 2021. That one dropped a lot of factors as well. And it dropped a good chunk of glares as well. So if I go over here into my storage and show you guys these Soul Catalysts, it's like, I have a bunch of them. Now, it might be locked behind my storage one as well. Yeah, a good chunk of them. Look at all these Soul Catalysts. I did not make these. I just got them as a natural drop. And you can see that there's 8 slots of them. All I need to do to make an easy Astral Soul is just pretty much have a Darkness Soul at whatever slot number I'm going to work with. Or just use that certain Darkness Soul fodder piece at whatever slot it is. And then just use the max one if I want to. But yeah, if you play the waiting game, some of these urgent quests are going to drop some of this stuff naturally. So... like getting an Astral Soul, for example, that's not the hardest one to worry about. Like, if you're having issues with it right now, you might want to play the waiting game until you get these Soul Catalysts as a natural drop in future urgent quests. But that's going to take some time because I don't know when that's going to happen. And then most likely at the same time, there's NGS coming around the corner as well. But if you play the waiting game, it's not going to be hard to try to go for that certain piece. Now, you might be wondering, how about, like, factor abilities and then Reverie abilities as well? I could tell you straight up that glare abilities are still a pain in the butt to farm for. There are some ways around it, which I will make in separate videos. But if I pull up Angie Glare, for example, and I look at the unit piece for this, let's look at a 3-slot and 4-slot price, because if you're going for that certain formula, it's going to be, you know, the usual go-to, especially if you want to use 4-slot protects. As you can see, this thing is a whopping 1.7 mil, and if I check the 4-slot one, it's going to be high as well. So some of the glares are going to be stuck up there. Angie and Dominius on the Japanese side, we can't really get that easily. Over there in Global, you guys got a trigger, but I don't know if people are actually farming that said trigger. And I need to stare at all the different prices on Global PSO2 to figure out like some other things as well. But yeah, Angie is high up there still on the Japanese side. If I look at Dominius, the alternative one you would want to go for, it's gonna be, let's check the 3-slot first, 1.3 mil. Let's check the 4-slot, almost 2 mil. So you start earning a profit just by trying to farm for these and just sell them naturally. If you want to try to buy an absolute glare, for example. Let's see how much this costs on the unit market on ship 2. Let's look at a 3 slot. You can see that that's 42 mil, 4 slot most likely 50 mil. If I look at a glare catalyst, 4 slots is 11 mil, 3 slot will be roughly around 9 mil. So that is completely different from something like the factor catalyst. If I type that in, you'll be surprised at the price. And once again, the urgent quest kind of changed that. Now, I think a lot of people bought out a lot of the cheaps. Wait. I think this is an okay price for a catalyst. And then in terms of ETA factor, 4 slot is 24 mil, 3 slot would be what? 31 mil. So if you go for a 4 slot, that would be about a bit cheaper. Now let's stare at the factor abilities in themselves. So like Yamato factor at 3 slot, it's cheap because guess what? That urgent quest made it cheap. Now apparently a 4 slot jumps tremendously from a 3 slot, but if you look at some other prices, they will most likely be cheap as well. So just keep that in mind. If I type induce, for example, that one's gonna be easy because also what we have the trigger for that. That tends to drop like candy when you do the deuce and mother trigger, the solo one. And then the mother one, that one's gonna be all over the place. That one's the most expensive out of them. Well, it is cheap because once again, she did drop a lot of her abilities in that seasonal urgent quest, so the price right now is okay. And if you think about it, you do a bit of math, you might actually make a bit of a profit if you just buy some of these pieces and work to get a certain catalyst type. So if I go back to this thing, but it costs roughly around 3 mil for the 3 slot one. Rough around 3.5 mil. It's like 3,675,000. But you can get a profit just by buying some of those cheap things and then gambling to make a catalyst. And if you really want to push it, you could try to make an ether factor as well. But yeah, that got decreased. Like the fodder pieces got decreased because of the, what was it? The urgent quest. The seasonal urgent quest. Now, as you can see, Mana Reverie, going to that one now, it is still high up there, but it's not as expensive. Now, compared to Global, where you can easily get these triggers to pop and run a bunch of Persona ones, you... Hold up, someone just messaged me. But, like, with the Mana Rev stuff, or the Reverie stuff, let us now look at the Reverie catalyst. Let's check out the prices for 3 slot, 4 slot, then we can check the other things as well. So, you're getting a bit of profit off of that one. 4 slot one, it's not as high, unless you go for the bigger numbers, like 6 slot, 7 slot. Even then, actually, it's not as bad. 8 slot is pushing it. I would advise you not to do higher slot numbers. But let us take a look at some of these other abilities. So, that is cheap. Because of Ultra Persona as well, I think these drops are just not as bad. I don't think there's a certain Reverie type that is stupidly expensive. Most of them are in an affordable range. What else? This Persona Rev is so easy to get. You don't need to worry about that one. Double. Double might be questionable. Well, at the 4 slot, yeah. 4 slot, it seems like... Man, it's not that bad. What's the last one? Loser, we still have, like, Loser Urgent Quest popping up every now and then, especially Omega 1. Yeah, it's not as bad. So making a Reverie Receptor, Reverie Catalyst, excuse me, not Receptor, Catalyst, or going for Mana Rev, you get a good chunk of profit as well. It just depends on how much you're buying, if you already have the pieces, etc, etc. But yeah, that one, since you guys got the trigger over there, it's not as bad. But the big ones would be those things. And once again, these prices will decrease in due time. The easiest way to avoid any sort of RNG and just, you know, getting something at 100%, especially a catalyst type, is waiting for these add ability items. Don't know why they haven't updated it over there in the global PSO2 yet. I still question why you have a fucking power boost item over there. But, yeah, these would be a lot better than those things. And the thing is, the thing is, yeah, it's just that these things can definitely give you 100% guaranteed as long as you don't upslot, and it's just better because this helps you get one of the abilities. Now, on the Japanese Battle Pass Mission Pass, there's only, what, 2 slots for these things. Now, the other problem, once again, is that I don't know how Global's going to execute it, because looking at some of the stuff over there, it's like, you can see that we cleanly separate the cosmetics from the technical stuff. It's not mixed in together. For Global, it's like you got technical stuff, but then it's kind of mixed in with the cosmetics. You gotta choose one or the other. So, yeah, I don't know how this is gonna work over there on Global. I don't know how they're gonna execute it. Are they gonna leave it alone and let it be its own thing? Or are they gonna actually do that sort of combo where it's like you get cosmetics, or you go for, what is it? Go for the technical things. But yeah, if you just played a waiting game, it's just gonna get easier. I already showed you guys the prices as well. Showed you some of the drops. The other thing too is that soon you guys are gonna get that limited quests for episode 6. There's 2 types of them. There's that episode 6 one that specifically says in its name it's episode 6. You would want to farm that because it not only gives you a bunch of modules and a bunch of the glares that you need to make photonic glares and Metro and Shiva stuff. It's also gonna give you a trigger. Now this trigger is different in terms of its drops. It's gonna allow you to go to the second half. I already have videos for it. You can look in the description for that. But the limited quest is gonna drop crack. The limited trigger quest version of episode 6 is gonna drop crack. And that's how I was able to stockpile on a bunch of crack. Now, another thing is we had the 2020 Beach Wars version on the Japanese PSO2, and that also dropped a lot of crack as well. So, when it comes to farming crack, you just need to kind of wait for certain quests. Now, right after that limited quest, there might be another limited quest, and that's going to be with Exicor, the big purple guy you bump into most of the time in Divide quest. Exicor is going to be dropping that particular limited quest drops a lot of SSAs, and guess what? Skydance Boon is a drop over in that limited quest. Well, yeah, in that certain limited quest. And then, obviously, if you wait a bit more, you'll be able to get Origin Glare, which then you can get a Photonic Glare, which then you can try to go for Absolute Glare, and then try to go for a Guardian. So if you played a waiting game, it's just going to decrease the cost. And from what I stared at with Sega and the pattern on the Japanese side, they're just going to open up all these ways so you can farm for them. Now, some people are saying that, you know, if they played a waiting game, they're going to give out abilities. Let me debunk that right now. If they wanted to make it easy, they should have already done that. A good example of this is that you guys got the Ray and Union weapons. The Ray and Union weapons have an SAF of an Astral Soul. So, because of all these future weapons down the line, the big one I can point to is like the Profound Darkness weapons. The 13-star, even the Celestial, or whatever the prior version of the Trailblazer one is, that 14-star you need. Why didn't they give you an SAF of a Mana Rev? They give you an SAF of a Reverie Catalyst, but not a Mana Rev. And there is an SAF of an Ether Factor now, but it's on the Fluxio weapon, which is a 15-star, and you can only acquire an X amount of these by doing a certain title, and they're kind of on par, or they're being compared to the Lightweaver, so it's another pretty much endgame weapon you might want to go for. So the thing is, if they avoided making it easy, why would some people say they will make it easy to try to get this? The big reason to why I'm going to stress this out is just because if the game wanted to make it easy, they should have already done that on several occasions. Now, most likely they might change that because, once again, they did some unpredictable things like making returner abilities, veteran resolve abilities easy to farm for after like 8 years. They locked that behind abduction. But at the same time, would Sega really risk like the wrath of their support, their player base, especially if they make a lot of things too easy? Because if they release a way to get like Guardian so easily, what did you just do? You kind of milked a shit ton of money out of all the players that dumped a lot of money into making a Guardian so. Note that once again, I decreased my cost. My initial cost on day one when Guardian so was released, yeah, it was at 300 mil. But my second piece went to 150 mil, and then my last piece wasn't as bad. So I heard stories of how people spent billions and spent a lot of real life money to try to go for a Guardian so when the time came, especially during that that certain affix week that followed after the release of the Guardian Soul stuff. People went crazy on it. And what would happen if Sega just dumped that? I don't think that would be a good move. Now, once again, they might do some other things in the future. They might add an ability item for an absolute glare later. I can see that happen. Because if they already implement this over here, there's a chance that they're going to do that. Or they might release a certain game mode in the future where it could drop you one of these finalized things as well. But if it's really big, they're going to make sure that it's not going to be that, or it's not going to be too easy to get it. Now, once again, this is a gamble. There's a lot of things you can gamble on, and that's the big one that I have gambled on, and that is why I'm pretty stern with that. If Sega wants to prove me wrong and do that, then they can do that. But once again, that's gonna piss off a lot of players. But, you know, in due time, once you let go, it's not gonna be a big deal. Now, for the Japanese side, like, it's already been months, like 6 months since they released Guardian so. I think that was, I don't remember when I first did that certain video, but like the thing is, it's not gonna hurt anymore, especially if once again you already did it in that moment. Global is a bit distorted, weird, because it's not really in that moment, because I hate to be the one to point this out, but Japan did it first. And like Global is just following it up, but because of that 8 times speed, it's gonna be weird. It's gonna be weird. And it's going to be frustrating to some players, because guess what? That's what happened when people were trying to farm and make an Atlas EX. That's what happened when people were trying to farm and make the Riverlight. Around the corner, give it a couple months, they released a bunch of free stuff. Now, after I picked up on the pattern, it was like, oh, okay, so this is what they're doing. They're releasing some of this stuff, the big free events stuff that happened in Japan over there in Global, but they're putting a twist to it. And there's so many things I could point out, but I already stressed that out enough, so yeah, if you play a waiting game, it's going to be easy. The only problem you'll bump into are those protects, because, once again, they will stack against you because you need an X amount. And depending on how you personally feel with going for something endgame, and then how that carries over to NGS, and also NGS factor as well, it's up to you. You got to figure it out. But this is why, if you play the waiting game, you'll be rewarded. That's what happened to me, because guess what? I was able to make... I didn't need to spend millions of Meseta to try to get the returner abilities. I actually waited... Or I might have skipped over it. That was my initial plan, but then they released that Extreme Quest, and then that opened up a lot of options. I farmed for it. I got the pieces. I made it for cheap. So, if you play the waiting game, you can make stuff for cheap. It's just that, once again, those badges are going to be the issue, and getting protects. But, it might stay at 1 million. It might decrease a bit. The problem is, it's already past its glory phase where it was cheap, and you could have got a lot of them. And if you talked to me in the past and you've seen some of my videos, especially when I made Guardian so, you would notice that, oh, this guy's using force stop attacks. I might need to look into that, ask how he got that, etc, etc. So I already gave some people some tips about that. But anyways, that is it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. If you have any comments, questions, concerns, put it down below. Make sure to watch those other videos to understand this one. If you didn't, then it is what it is. But I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.